man, so it is a beautiful Saturday morning here. Welcome back to an edition of the Wisdom Workshop Whiteboard. My name is Sean Waters. This is a kind of tiny experiment in practical flourishing. We're gonna double click on happiness. So what is happiness? And this is what we've come up with. It is a PERMA-Cycle, P-E-R-M-A, cycle as a loop, or a little bit different where we end a little bit differently than when we started. And PERMA, some of you may already have recognized, is the acronym that Martin Seligman uses in Flourish for the 5 characteristics of what happiness is. It's how to understand and cultivate happiness. So this is a 5-week happiness boot camp. So 5 weeks, container. Happiness, we're gonna define there is emotional characteristics to happiness, moral implications to happiness, and existential implications to happiness. Basically, how we feel, who we are, and what choices we make. Again, this is in the Wisdom Workshop framework, right? It's building on all of that work. So when our definition of happiness has these 3 parts to it. It is emotional. There is emotional clarity and full-bodied feeling good. It doesn't do us any, if we have an amazing experience, but we're not present to experience and savor and appreciate and love and cherish it, that's a core part of happiness, emotional. We could also say it's subjective, i.e. it is a feeling that we don't have words for. So I could describe it as a mixture of awe and hope, or joy and love. But those are words from a particular culture that I'm using to describe like my experience of yellow or blue. I could tell you what blue is like, but it's not going to get to the subjective experience of blue. Happiness is like that, more like yellow maybe. That we can't actually say what it is. There's a subjective element of that. I'm going to put that with emotional, so subjective emotional. The second one is moral. And this is our sense of developmental. I.e., I am going to make the argument, or I'd like to make the argument, that being happy, part of being happy is doing what we can to be a good person, to become the best version of ourselves. That means we're happy. I have a hard time imagining someone happy who is also a unethical, immoral person that uses other people, for example. I don't think that's happiness. And that's not the kind of happiness we're after. At least I want to say happiness has an essential moral or developmental dimension. And the third one is existential. These are the choices that you make. And our ability to make good decisions and actually feel happy, which is a kind of a shorthand way of saying I like it or I approve, which is an essential part we're going to need to get to. And it's the work of stumbling on happiness. But no, this is to be happy with the choices to be happy with the life happy with the life we're given, but also happy with the 20% that we have and our ability to modify our happiness set point. Okay, so that's happiness. Sense of a boot camp has a couple different associations. One, that it's practical and active. Yes. I'm recording.
Daddy!
What? You gonna show me something?
finally ready.
All right. So there's 3 senses of the boot camp here. 1, it is practical active. So it implies a set of doing, say about 6 hours a week, and spread out across daily practice. It is also preparatory. So it's like in the sense that the boot camp gets you ready for a lifetime of practice, right? This is like, it's also basic. So it maybe actually, it's like a basic training. And then the third one is that these boots are made for walking. That's just what they'll do. Boots implies journeying or exploring. Journey. Exploratory. Again, tiny experiments. So we're going to use, as we see in the E, this kind of framework for a journey that is cyclical. So next thing is this 5 weeks. What this looks like. 1, and it's laid out. Whoops, didn't have myself. It's laid out along this acronym. And again, this is from Martin Seligman's Positive Psychology, the aspects of human flourishing. And each of these, we could say, happens sequentially. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But there's also a sense that they each start a new cycle. So we could start with this 5 weeks could be, for example, relationships, meaning, accomplishments, positive emotions, and engagement. Or it could start with accomplishments and so on and so forth. You get the point. All right, so it's sequential in a sense, but it's also not only happening in sequence, but they're kind of happening all at once. It could have different starting points. So instead of just seeing it like sequential moving through time, there is a real sense that it's a loop where we start and then kind of keep going. Ideally, this ends up being a giant upward spiral. It's kind of actually sideways in this rendition. But you have like this loop, but then spirals upwards. Okay, now we're really on to something. Great. Okay. We can draw loops on the board. Good job. Very good. Okay, what are the 5 weeks? P is positive emotions. E is engagement. Namely, active engagements with projects of worth. What's up? Susan Wolf, American philosopher. Positive emotions, engagements, relationships. M is meaning making. Could say meaning, we are going to emphasize the creative aspect of meaning, the making aspect, and then C, accomplishments or achievements. Now, just a little bit on these. These are the 5 aspects, you could say, that help us feel happy, to savor, appreciate, cherish our experience, particularly with the people that we love, the work that we do, our sense of greater significance, and what we actually achieve or accomplish. Each of these is foundational in some way or another. We're going to start with positive emotions to broaden and build, to use that term from Fredrickson. Let's actually just put this. When we do positive emotions, you're really actually distinguishing between constructive and destructive. So we are broadening and building. In those positive emotions, this is also connected to psychological capital. So not just our sense of emotional well-being and the feeling that we have, our emotional wellness is also connected to our psychological capital, how we actually think and process, interpret, explain our emotions that are happening. And particularly, I'm fascinated with a couple of positive emotions, hope or confidence. So actually having hope and confidence that this will go well, to expect wisely. I'm fascinated with that as a frame. Awe is another one that I'm fascinated with as a sense of reverence to the moment, as a certain kind of positive emotion. It's actually not like, ooh, yay, this feels positive. It's positive in the sense that it's constructive, expansive, enriching, moves beyond the limited self. Point being, for our purposes, short overview of the big picture. What makes emotions positive or constructive is that they are not negative or destructive. They are not rooted in greed. They're not rooted in hatred, and they're not rooted in confusion. They're actually rooted in awareness, an awareness and insight about the nature of reality, which is insanely complex and interdependently co-arising. So constructive emotions are those that help us embody fit socially, emotionally, interpersonally, all of that. Okay, we got to put one more or two more, joy and love. This is by no means an exhaustive list of positive, constructive emotions, and I'm actually going to suggest that our positive emotions may be less like a typification, a category, and more like we can be culturally sensitive to the idea that positive emotions may exist in ways that we don't have the words for in our native English. Okay, so for positive emotions, that what we mean is that these are constructive. We broaden and build them through practice, hope, awe, joy, and love. And in this first week, we'll create a contract that's basically identifying how we want to show up for these 5 weeks. So during this first week, you get to, by the start of week 2, you'll have set a draft of what you think your accomplishment might be over the course of the time. That includes daily and a capstone project. And if you do that, if you meet that, I'll give you your money back, or at least part of it. It's also be a first fun excuse to get paid for writing, for example. So if you've wanted to make money with your writing, you could pay someone else to join a course and then do the writing, to hold you accountable to do the writing, get the writing done. And once you do it, you set that accomplishment, and then now you did it, you actually get paid for that piece. So that's actually a great transition, because it's an example of how we might game our engagement with accomplishments. The idea that we could set up a container or a course where you get paid at the end if you meet a goal that you set is playing with incentives and understanding how those incentives and frameworks help shape our engagement. Engagement, I'm super excited about both of this framework, because engagement is like the gold standard of educators. So if you're an educator and you're an artist in education, where other people, like other craftspeople, would work on refining their craft and getting better and better and better and better at the subtle elements of their craft, that's this. And what's so cool about engagement, thinking about engagement, and how we as facilitators and course creators show up in the ways that promote or detract from engagement from the participants, which is different for everyone depending on where they are, and the interdynamic process of gathering and all that, whatever. There's some tips and tricks that we're going to use, i.e. some frameworks, namely experiments, to play with an idea that we can bring in, play, experiments, sense of demos or prototypes. So actually making something that you can prototype, and this is life design method that we've used in the Wisdom Workshop for a long time, to promote active engagement in projects of worth. When we talk about projects of worth, we're talking about meaning making. This is our way of making meaning in the world and making meaning in our actions that we take. So we're touching on projects of worth. That's still playing with our expectations, playing with synchronicity, which is going to connect meaning making as well. And then at the heart of this whole thing is the relationships. These are our connections and sense of connections. This is our sense of interpersonal learning, how we discover self-inquiry with others. Finally, accomplishments is our sense of achieving something or having something done. Sending something out the door and using that as a jump start to a new PERMA-Cycle. So I set, in 5 weeks, I set an achievement. I make that achievement unlocked. That achievement unlocked inspires greater hope, awe, joy, and love. And this time around, I'm gonna do a similar thing, but focus on how that might connect with other people. So first time around, I was just looking to establish a more hopeful attitude. And I'm gonna do that in a way that I am doing these actions. I am deleting social off of my phone, in itself a huge accomplishment. I am writing every day for 5 minutes at least, itself a huge accomplishment. And as I go through, I am going to, as I deliberately reflect on hope and see how it plays out, I'm going to select a short passage to share with the group that encapsulates 5 weeks of my journey to myself and to the group, to share my hero's quest, the boon from my journey that I've taken. That's going to start a new loop because I've constructed something and broadened and built my capacity to do something else in the future that I know not what that is. I wanted to make this long video, which is now very long, I'm imagining, to show that this is, while we start here with positive emotions, there's a sense that when we see this big layout, we could choose consciously which one of these is most alive. As I've been working on this, I might say, you know what? Oh, that's what I want to focus on. I'm going to prioritize those relationships over making content or marketing a boot camp, which sounds very militaristic in a way that's troubling given our situation in America in 2025. Okay, PERMA-Cycle, 5-week happiness boot camp, basic training in wellness. Five aspects: positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning making, and accomplishments. And this is a loop. If this sounds interesting, let me know. And see you later. Thanks for the whiteboard session.